if it wakes me up at night, I go in the next day and I fucking take care of it, and I don't come home until it's taken care of. And I'm not going to lie and tell you that like I was the Billy Badass at this shit when it started. I have stayed to where I should have went home at 4 o'clock, and I've sat there and avoided the conversation, or like the timing didn't work out or something, like, and I'm still sitting there at 6:30 at night, and I won't go home because I'm like, I have to resolve this.
How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in place? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
Welcome to another episode of the Tactical Empire. Today I'm joined by Sean Ryder. How are you, Sean? What's going on, man?
Oh, we're making it. We're making it, man. Had a busy weekend fixing the garden, but the kids have unlimited energy, so it was a long weekend. We all slept great last night. How are you doing?
Oh man, I'm good. Yeah, your kids can be super exhausting. I understand. Get four of them.
I'm good. 99.9999% scientifically proven that we probably will not have another kid due to the amazing medical methods out there. So we're grateful for the two that we have, and they are fantastic. And I try to not be the dad that says no, but sometimes you're just really tired. I'm like, give me 5 minutes to just sit on the couch, and then I will get right back up and go out and scooter for the 5th time today. It's okay.
There, man. This episode is all about vasectomies, just so you know. Just kidding. Yes. I kid. All right, man. What are we talking about?
Let's go. Well, you guys are 3 days away from actually hitting the road, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of lessons and mistakes, no matter how well you have planned things. So it got me thinking, I want to go back in time and talk to, but I want to talk to the current Jeff, looking back at the younger Jeff and some of the mistakes that we made, in business ownership or just going through life as it is. I know we mentioned some of these on other podcasts, but it might be leadership, it might be financial, it might just be overall mindset, but I'm just going to let you take it. Looking back now, in your late 30s, going into 40s, me mid 30s, owned a business for 12 years, starting another business, have a couple LLCs, mentored hundreds of people. I've seen plenty of mistakes, but I want to talk about my own mistakes as well today. And maybe one of those might relate to someone. And we're going to be talking about how we've kind of got over it. So ball's in your court. Take it anywhere you want to go with one of the biggest mistakes Jeff Smith made back in the day.
I think about the most prevalent ones as they're relatable to me. I've made a lot of mistakes, of course, more than most, I would guess. That just tells me I've been doing a lot of things.
That's
and
right.
But I think they're really, like, if you're talking about the most common ones that you see, usually, and these were true for me too. So I'm not talking about just common from my perspective of coaching entrepreneurs. Leadership was one of my number one ones. I was a shitty leader when I started business, when I started in business. And I don't really know how to describe it as much as, like, I used to say I lacked empathy, which is actually true in my personal life. There's no doubt about that. I am not a very empathetic soul. But as a leader of an organization with a team and a staff and things like that, I think that when I was younger in my career, I just always went in like, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I kind of led that way. And also, I had an expectation of everybody was kind of like me, or everybody was driven or had kind of a level of respect to how they showed up and how they produced. And like, that's just not the case. And everybody's different, and you have to manage personalities and stuff like that. And when I was younger, I was hard-headed about that. And I was like, well, people are going to do it my way, or they're going to get out. And now I think it was more of, I needed to be a better leader, as far as like not just telling people what to do, but explaining like why, and then leading by example and things like that. So for me, the two things that come to mind when you bring this up are definitely leadership. And then the second one is like thinking too small. Throughout my trajectory of the last 20 years of business, like early on, I thought way too small, as far as like where I could go or what I could do. And so I did a lot of things the hard way, which taught me a lot of lessons, but also kind of it was an impediment to my progress as well. I think that I could have moved things further, faster, and smoother, certainly, without the headaches and the fucking tumultuous rubbish I left behind in the wake of my disastrous decisions in certain areas. So those two things come to mind very quickly. And then which is why I bring up like financial, or not financial, your leadership qualities and your leadership acumen need to be growing constantly. And I think that part of that was like me coming out of my military background, is that like we operated in teams, and like there was just an expectation that you got the job done. And when you come into business and you employ civilians, like that's just not the case. It's a different thought process. And also, I mean, I was in special operations, so I was running with a different level of people. Just to get there, you have to have a different kind of framework and mindset in general. And like when you come back and you're starting a business and you're paying people a pittance, like you're not going to get it, like it, and I'm not, this is not disparaging about who you were employing. It's just the framework and the mindset of the team that you put together on day one of your business is probably not going to be a fucking unlimited Pentagon budget of upper echelon hitters. And so, so leading other people that are normal people that don't have the same aspirations as me, that want to go home and pet their dog and like hang out and drink some beers by the pool and have a regular life, is just different. And so it took me a while to be receptive to that.
Yeah, I think I can relate to a lot of that. Obviously, I think leadership is the biggest thing that I've made plenty of mistakes on, and I can relate to those comments, and maybe for different reasons. Some of the biggest mistakes I made as a leader was the evolution of leadership as my business grew, and we started to generate more financial rewards, which then in turn made me either pay my good people better or hire better people, and my leadership expectations and styles didn't evolve, I think, appropriately in that space. And I say that, and I'll go back and explain that, is like when my business was young, I was in it, I was doing the thing. And so it was very easy for me to keep the leadership style that I was accustomed to as a former athlete, which was motivational leadership. Was, hey, we're going to show up and we're going to do the work, and it's going to be very motivating. And I've said this before on another podcast: is I wasn't the head coach of any of those teams. I was a player leading other players, and I viewed my business the same way. I'm a young owner, but I'm doing the same things that you guys are doing. We're coaching classes, we're leading, and helping people. And then as I grew, matured, and my desires changed in regards to the amount of time that I wanted to spend in the business and at the business, I didn't alter my way of leading, and I probably became more passive. And I don't like to micromanage people, so I kind of use that as an excuse to not help and not train and not uphold the standards. And so I realized that was a huge mistake. Was like, I didn't need to be in the business on the floor to articulate, train, and uphold the standards. I could have done that a little bit better. And then also kind of what you said at the end there was, you said not everyone thinks the way that you think. And for me, it really came down to, I get annoyed and frustrated when people don't make the decisions that I would make if I was in their situation. So it wasn't necessarily that you need to think the way that I think or be who I am, but when I can very quickly come to a solution or a resolution to a situation, and someone else didn't, that can be annoying to me. But I've had to recognize that that I have to be able to empower other people to make mistakes, one, and not have that expectation of them, two, or three, train them ahead of time on how I would want certain situations to be handled. So I made all those mistakes, and that's something that I'm trying to work on as I go into new businesses. And you're right. I also agree that one of the things that made my original business kind of start to falter over the past year, 2 years before we closed it was I forgot that I used to be the person that was cool with going to work for 8 hours and then doing a little extra or just going home and watching Netflix. Whereas now I'm very efficient with my time. I want to keep everything in a very clear, tight box, and then I want to go do the things I want to do. And I forget what it's like to just show up and have fun at work sometimes for the hell of it. And so I got to realize that people aren't trying to live the life that I'm living. So I got to meet them where they are and just show them the standard for the new business. But one of the biggest mistakes that I made was, we talked about this on other podcasts, maybe, and you can talk about it in the context of this situation, was I think I was always good with controlling money, but I didn't have jobs for money. So one of the mistakes, which it's first world problem, so it wasn't a mistake, was like I just let money sit in bank accounts, especially in business bank accounts.
Yep.
So that was definitely a mistake because if I would have had a plan and a job for that money, I would be 4 or 5 years ahead of where I am now. But to kind of switch topics there and throw the ball back in your court is, I'm 4 and 5 years behind on that financial curve because I think the biggest mistake I made was I didn't hire mentors for the first 7 years of my business. So that's probably, if I had to pinpoint what was my biggest mistake, is I didn't have coaching. I didn't hire mentors. And even after hiring mentors, I still had a tendency, and to a certain extent still do sometimes, not reaching out for help as fast as I need to, because I want to figure it out. But I have to get better at asking for that insight and guidance faster, way faster.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a level of it, shedding that ego that goes into that, though, as far as asking those questions. I think that's super important because but you also have to be around, you have to your circle has to contain people that are free of judgment to be able to do that, right? Because you can't really run around with people and have this error or aura of knowing everything and then ask them for help, right? Because that diminishes that. And I think that's one of the it's one of the worst things you can do as a business owner, is think you know everything, because it doesn't hurt to ask, but you have to surround yourself with people of shared values that are collectively not there to judge you. They don't give a shit what you're doing. The faster you can ask them, the faster you can get a resolution, which is what we all want, right? So I think I've made that mistake a long time ago. I think I've grown beyond that at this point, for sure. But that's a great tip for a business owner. If you're on the fence, trying to figure, but you see this all the time. I think a lot of guys do it specifically. You try to solve the problem yourself, and it takes too long, and it gets to be clunky, or God forbid you make the wrong decision which sets you back another 3 months, and then you got to fucking regroup and redirect and then go. And I think that being able to kind of leverage the resources that you have at hand is super important, to recognize that, so that you don't have to always do that. I mean, I think we're at a point now, maybe I think you're at a point there too, where it doesn't hurt to bounce things off of other people just to get a second set of eyeballs on it. Even if you're not necessarily I don't give a fuck what you tell me. I just need you to look at this real quick. And what am I missing? And I'm going to take your feedback. I'm going to process it. I'm going to listen to it and then move on no matter what. And I'm still going to make the decision, maybe not that I was going to make, but I still may make the decision I was going to make anyway. And I find that I prefer to collaborate like that with other people that are in, just to hear, like, okay, you look at this chessboard and you tell me what you see, and I'm going to listen to it, and I'm still going to go do what I want to do no matter what, but I want to hear your perspective on it. And I think I am much more like that. I'm much more inclined to do that than I was 5 years ago, certainly than I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago,
Mm.
because it was more of like a scarcity mindset or a competitive mindset or a like a lack mindset that like, I mean, I do this all the time now and I still see a bunch of other people have issues with it, but like I have no problem sending deals to people and being like, hey, will you look at this deal? Other people try to tell me about it. And this is a real estate analogy, folks, just so you know, when I say a deal, like other people will send me something and then they get crazy, like wrapped around the axle on like not sending me the address or not sending me this because they think I'm going to go buy their fucking house. And I'm like, dude, I've got so much shit going on. I need you to bring me the most concise version of this so I can evaluate it for you as quickly as possible, but I need all the details. I am definitely not going to go offer on your fucking house. I don't give a fuck about it. But like, if you want an answer and you want it fast, you need to give me all the details. And they're like, will you sign an NDA? And I'm like, no, I have no time for this. Like, like, and so I think that oftentimes people get stuck on that stuff. And like, I have been able to reframe my mindset of like, there is no limitation of opportunity at all. And if I sent a deal to somebody and they actually went underneath me and bought it, I would be like, whoa, I know a lot more about that person than I did fucking 24 hours ago. And it would tell
Mm.
me a lot about who I'm dealing with.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
like that's just weird, first of all. And like, I mean, if anything, my circle of people would come back to me and be like, "Hey, you want to partner on this?" And I'd be like, "Yes or no." And like
Yeah.
that would be a palatable response, not like go I'm going to go buy this thing out from under you. So I just think some people operate from a bizarre space. So mindset is another one that can make or break you when you're talking about things you did wrong or losses you took. A lot of times your mindset led to the L's that you took. And so
Mhm.
it, because you make decisions based on your perception of the situation and you weren't maybe as mature at that point in time, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that speaks to me. I mean, just creating the stories in your head, and it's one thing that I think I have learned over time is to actually address something way faster and not let it marinate. Because the longer it marinates, the bigger the story is going to get, and the farther from the truth I'm probably traveling down the road. So I think that's a big insight for me over time. But how do you like? I guess self-awareness is one. And how have you kind of recognized that? I know it doesn't happen overnight. How do you recognize mistakes and then implement them? You just have to be open to the fact that we're not perfect and that we need to take some constructive criticism from other people who are either ahead of us, or you might hire a therapist that might point things out.
Yeah.
And one thing for me is like when I hear that and I have that visceral reaction to not wanting to hear that feedback, I just really have to call myself out on it and just pause. I think the good thing about owning small businesses is that we can move really quickly, but I also, because I like to move quickly, I also make decisions quickly, and I think that kind of puts me in predicaments sometimes because I haven't either gotten all the information, or I haven't thought of how other people would respond to situations, or I haven't asked for their insight to kind of make the best decision for everyone involved. So that's something that I've recognized myself. And so pausing is a really good tactical cue that I've kind of taken recently.
I like that. I like that. For me, it's just like really recognizing how I'm feeling about things. And like, and what I mean by that is like, are you getting woken up at night by anything? Are you anxious about anything? Do you feel unsettled by anything? And
Mm.
that's a really hard one for people to dig into because like a lot of times you don't recognize it, or like, do you have a tendency to grab a few more drinks at night than you otherwise usually do? And then you have to go back and say, why am I doing this? And then you
Mhm.
track it down the rabbit hole to like, okay, well, I'm stressed about these decisions, or we're understaffed, or like I made a bad decision with that motherfucker and like screwed that whole thing up. And then you like start peeling back the layers like, well, why? And so because because I'm huge on eliminating all that friction, right? And the recognition of what it is. Because sometimes you bottle up all these emotions and you beat yourself up about a decision you made, and like you need to let that shit go. And, or you sit and you toil over a decision that you should have taken care of like last week, and you just drag it on because you don't want to do the work, you don't want to do the conversation, you don't want to do the task, or you don't want to fire the person because you might have to do the shit now for the next 3 weeks until someone else can do it. There's just a variety of things going on there. One of the best exercises I ever did, and it was because I was so bad at business. One of the best things I recognized about myself is that like I used to wake up between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, just fucking anxious and stressed constantly about my business. When this is when I had the gym and some other shit going, and and the one of the rules I implemented for myself is that if something wakes you up in the middle of the night, like at 1 o'clock in the morning, you have to resolve it by the end of the day, the next day. So what I mean by this is like, and I guarantee there's people out there listening that have like these conversations with their staff they're putting off. So and so did something. So and so called some client or like sent a picture or something, like who knows, like we've all had a variety of weird shit happen with our staff that like it just is like gut punches us, and it's an anxiety inducing situation, and we live with it for a period of time. And like that's what used to wake me up at night. Like I would avoid stuff, I would like not address the elephant in the room. I wouldn't. So this goes back to being a bad leader, right? And so for me, like if I needed to fire someone or something like that, I would not leave work. I made this rule. I wouldn't leave work and go home until it had been done the next day. So it never lasted another day. Because if you've ever owned a business and you've had a client issue, how many of you have ever like intended on having a very tough conversation that could have blown up in your face, and that person could quit, or you could end up having to fire them based on the direction this conversation goes, and you're supposed to do it on Friday and you allow it to go through the weekend, and you think about nothing that week. It ruins your whole fucking weekend. You're stressed out with your kids, you're snapping at your wife, you have no patience for your kids wanting a fifth scooter ride, and it's all because you have strapped yourself with this anxiety of something you should have taken care of Friday before you left. And so for me, that became like my line in the sand. Like if it wakes me up at night, I go in the next day and I fucking take care of it, and I don't come home until it's taken care of. And I'm not going to lie and tell you that like I was the Billy Badass at this shit when it started. I have stayed to where I should have went home at 4 o'clock, and I've sat there and avoided the conversation, or like the timing didn't work out or something, like, and I'm still sitting there at 6:30 at night, and I won't go home because I'm like, I have to resolve this. And then I have the conversation, but I have done it, but I have procrastinated that situation. And so I'm not going to lie about it, but like that rule helped me tremendously. And I've just kind of built off that awareness and that level of introspection on like, why am I feeling this way? Like, and I use it in every aspect. Like how am I having conversations with my wife? How am I showing up with my kids? Like I evaluate it with every aspect of what we're doing, but like I try to just fucking feel as good as I possibly can. And so when anything is interfering with that, I am then taking stock of why. Okay, I had too many scheduled calls today. Like I don't like that. It's grating on me. I had too much blah blah blah. I don't like that. I need to reconstruct my schedule. I didn't get done what I needed to get done today. How do I overcome that? I put too many things on my to-do list. Don't do that. Blah blah blah, right? And so like you just have to learn what is causing you friction points in what you're doing, so that you can move yourself towards, I don't know, fulfillment, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of that goes back to like, okay, like I've suffered with tremendously, like I should be further along than I am at this point in time. And so you can turn that on yourself, a lot of time in the mirror is how this works. Like, why do you feel that you should be further along? And who feels that way?
Mm.
And like, it's so those are just some of the questions and the things that I ask myself frequently.
I just had this image of you, especially when you owned a gym, like walking into the gym with a pillow on days where you knew you had to make a tough decision and have a hard conversation because you weren't sure how long you were going to stay there. So, oh geez, here comes Jeff with his pillow again. One of us is getting fucking fired. That's awesome. I love it. Awesome. Man, I forget where I was. I think a lot of this comes back actually to Seneca. I think Seneca's quote was, "We suffer more in imagination than we do in reality." So I think that's why. So it is a dichotomy, though, is like moving moving quickly, taking care of things quickly. I think to a certain extent that could bite us in the butt sometimes. But I think what holds true about what you said was like, if it's making you feel different and it's not allowing you to focus on the path forward because you're hesitant to have a conversation. It doesn't have to be firing someone. It can just be having a conversation. Teaching a team member how to do something up to standard. You're like, oh, they're doing it just fine. I don't have time today to deal with that. Just, taking care of business. And we learn by making these mistakes. So you and I are definitely not the end all be all perfect little saints here when it comes to leadership and running our businesses. Like we said, we can still delay a little too long between conversations. So I think these are really, really good insights. I'm going to start sending you random texts out of nowhere asking for you to sign NDAs because I think that's hilarious. And you don't have time to sign them. I think that's a great way to tell people, just send me the damn deal if you want my input. So Jeff, why don't you send the people out?
Man, I think we've all made a ton of mistakes. I think that the other thing that I would say that I would add on when I think about that is, like, you talked about not wanting to hold people accountable. One of the biggest mistakes I made in leadership early on was that I would tell people what to do and then I would never follow up on it. And like the done by date, and then is it up to my standard? Like, I would just say, hey, we're going to do that this week. And then from my perspective, this goes back to where, like, not everybody is like me. I don't feel like I need to follow up and check on that because if I said I was going to do something, I'm going to do it. And like, for it not to get done would be totally out of character. And so, like, I don't even understand how, like, if I say we're doing this week by Friday and I'm never going to check on it again in 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I'm never going to check on it again. But then 3 weeks from now, when I remember that it was supposed to be done and then it's not done, I'm going to erupt on you because it doesn't even compute to me that it wasn't done last Friday. I just went about my business thinking I already told Sean to do it. It was done on Friday, and now I've moved on and I'm 1,000 things down the road from that thing. So when it comes back and bites me in the ass, then I am pissed, right? But ultimately, whose responsibility is that? It's mine. It's not theirs. It's not your team members. Like, there should have been a point where you followed up and said, hey, that's done well and up to standard, or it should have been done this way, and maybe we could tweak it a little bit next time. Let's do it this way. Here's how to do it. Because what happens, and this is what I learned throughout that process, is if you do not follow up on things and acknowledge that they were done either correctly, incorrectly, and congratulate them or whatever, thank them for doing it, then it becomes non-important to the people you're telling to do something, because they're like, Jeff told me to do this on Friday. I did it. He never acknowledged it, never recognized it. So it must not have been that important. So next Friday comes along and they do it kind of half-ass, never acknowledge, never say anything about it. 3 months down the road, you've got yourself a quagmire where it hasn't been done in 6 weeks at all. And it's because you never followed up with it and acknowledged that it was done, either right or wrong, good or bad or indifferent. It was not important to your employee anymore because they perceived it not important to you because you didn't follow up on it. So, like, that was one of my toughest lessons to learn. I hate follow up. I hate accountability and like managing managing is a pain for me.
Yeah.
And so like those were really hard things for me to block myself into when I had teams at the gym or in the service-based industry, especially.
Well, I
And
think I
so,
can relate to that. That goes back to my I don't like to micromanage people. And but I think a book recommendation that we both recommend a lot is Traction. And so one of the principles in Traction is who's holding these people accountable to this task. So when you have your meetings and you have your rocks and you have the tasks that people have to accomplish in 14 days or 90 days, who is the person holding them accountable to getting those things done? And in small business, a lot of time it is us, the owner, or us, the person that assigned the task. It doesn't have to be. But if someone's not assigned the accountability task, then all those feelings are up to happen. It's going to put you in a quagmire of either someone now realizes that that task was unimportant or that the job they did was good enough and it may not have been good enough. So then a month and a half later, the person who assigned is like, hey, this is a shit job. And it comes out of nowhere. So that's when everyone looks like a nail when you are a hammer type of leader. So Jeff, I appreciate the insights. Hopefully the people can take some lessons away. We'd love to hear about your lessons. Jeff, send the people out.
yeah, share the episode. Join us on the Facebook group.
Let's go.
Ask us any questions you want. DM us on Instagram, Real Jeff Smith, Sean _Ryder _ hit us up. We're here to help. Hope this episode helped a little bit with regards to leadership and bad decision-making processes in your business career. Enjoy. Have a kick-ass week. We'll talk soon.